Hey everybody, some gadget guy here, and we have a ton of news to talk about from Apple. Yesterday, they finally took the wraps off the new MacBook. They announced the pricing for the Apple Watch, the three different divisions of the Apple Watch: the Apple Watch Sport, the Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch Edition Plus. We can talk about that. Then also some other little pieces of news like Research Kit and the HBO announcement. And there was just so much explanation of everything that was coming out yesterday. I kind of just wanted to sit with my thoughts for a bit. I jumped into a hangout with Annabong with Board at Work. We kind of chatted out the announcement. We had like a quick little half-hour video just talking about everything that Apple had announced. But I really wanted to just sit, let this stuff sink in for a little bit, and then come back to you guys with fresh thoughts on where it is that I think Apple is going, what I actually kind of think and feel about this new technology that they announced, and then where we're sort of headed for this next stage of mobile computing and wearable electronics and all of this fun stuff. So we should probably jump in first with some of the announcements that they brought up first with the new MacBook. And I'll go into screen share just on Apple's website so that you're not constantly looking at my face for what it is that we're going to be talking about. But let's jump in here. Perfect. So, jumping into the new MacBook, it's definitely an evolution on what we've seen Apple already trying to work with for the MacBook Air. It's all about portability. It's again, we're making stuff as slim, as sleek as possible. And one of the things that I think is really interesting and why I've labeled this video the way I have is look at the way that Apple is positioning their products. Look at the way that Apple is announcing their products, and look at the way that Apple is discussing their products. So here we have the new MacBook. We're going to scroll down and they talk about how thin it is. Like we were saying, we're really focused on the thinness of the design, eliminating any potential girth. 12-inch Retina display. Of course, the brand name for the screen resolution, not the screen resolution. We'll get to that in just a bit. And then, of course, how heavy it is. It's a 2-pound laptop. And now we've got the color options. You can get it in silver, you can get it in gold, and you can get it in space gray. And this is sort of organized and set up very much in the way that we would take a look at, like a jewelry website. Sliding down, now we can see this one little speaker vent here, and then the full-sized keyboard. They're showing us off what the keyboard is going to look like. And you're like, okay, and I'm getting a really good sense of what this thing is going to look like. We don't have any sort of depth on these keys. And they did show us that in the keynote, which these are going to be really shallow key travel keys, but hopefully that scissoring action, that new click action is going to be a nice feel under your fingertips when you're actually using it. Now we've got a profile shot, again, showing us how thin and sleek this machine is going to be. And most of these photos focusing on the left side of the MacBook with this little the new USB-C connector. We don't often see pictures on the right side with where the headphone jack is. So this is, again, they're really trying to show off this one port design solution that they've come up with. Now we finally get into the Retina. So we do get a few tech specs on this main page, where we've got a 16:10 aspect ratio with this really funky resolution. It's always been one of the most frustrating aspects of dealing with Apple, and that they use very non-standard screen resolutions for all of their products. So 2304 by 1440. I'm like, all right, that's Retina. So that means you've got a pixel density that makes sense for a 12-inch display. I understand not going widescreen. For some reason, Apple is afeared of ever going widescreen, so you don't have 2560 by 1440. But 2304, I still don't understand the last 4 pixels, but that's what they needed. That's the pixel density that they wanted. And then we get into the trackpad, pushed even further with Force Touch. We'll now have very easy trackpad commands to get into things like right-click, contextual menus. And I really do like the idea of this being sort of more pressure-sensitive as opposed to it being a clicking action, which I've never really liked about Apple touchpads. I love scrolling and gestures on Apple touchpads, but I've never been a big fan of how they click. And then we're going to scroll down. Here's another glamour shot of the MacBook, making it look like some sort of wedge shape, which is really pretty and clean in gold. Please don't buy this in gold. And now it's fully equipped for a wireless world because there aren't very many ports, which leads us right into a slide on the USB-C data port here, which you're going to have to use for everything, charging the unit, connecting devices, external monitors. and astonishingly quiet because there's no fan. So they show us the internal casing, and these are all battery compartments, which is really exciting that this thing is going to have a 9 to 10 hour battery life. That's really cool. And that this is using a Core M processor. They don't say actually that this is using a Core M processor. Oh, right there. So it does say that it's using a Core M processor. So, I mean, now we've got some sort of notion of what's happening internally on the tech, and the new battery design with these sort of topographical batteries up to 9 hours of battery life in web browsing. One little quick bit on OS 10, one little quick bit on the built-in apps that you get in any type of OS 10 environment, and then it's pure invention. And then we get the starting price at $12.99. So if we come up here and we go to tech specs, we can get all of the bullet points on what's actually built into this machine, but we don't get any conversation on the performance of this thing, the power, the usability. This is the only shot where we see the headphone jack and these sort of little microphones right here. It's everything that most of what Apple is focusing on is this notion of style and design, portability, the thinness, how thin it is. It's thin. Did you notice that it was thin? Because it's thin. And then wrapping up with these sort of brand marketing, pure invention. I mean, that doesn't really mean anything. It's like when the iPhone 5S came out. When the iPhone 5S came out and Tim Cook is on stage holding off the 5S, and it's the most forward-thinkingest phone that anyone had ever seen before. And you're like, that's not a metric. That's not a way to judge a piece of technology. That's not a way to qualify or quantify what this thing can actually do. But it's the most, it feels really good to say. And Apple has finally in my opinion, has finally completely crested that hill where it doesn't matter. Specs? Oh, it doesn't matter. Performance? Nope, doesn't matter. And what they're trying to do is create a trend or a brand identity or a fashion or a lifestyle out of all of their products. And the MacBook, I think, was an excellent depiction of that, because we don't see a company trying to lead the way in terms of technology. This is the part of this broadcast where I'm going to start getting really hypercritical of Apple as a geek. Now, it should be pretty clear if you've watched any of my videos that I'm not the biggest Apple fan these days. But when I started kind of coming into the world of technology, especially as a professional, not just as a kid kind of playing with toys, I was an Apple product specialist for a company that ran a contract with Department of Energy. And so I used to have my hands in the guts of G5s and Xserves back when Apple sold servers. And it were really exciting times because we were using those IBM PowerPC chipsets. You could get dual socket, dual core CPUs in these workstations that were just insane. I mean, just computing power like we'd never seen before. And then Department of Energy were using them to string together these racks of just high-powered computing and servers for multinodal computing systems. And you could do real Unix in them because OS 10, you could go back into command line stuff, which was awesome. So moving from that point to where we are now, I really appreciate, the MacBook is sort of the laptop of the future. If in the future we all still continue to buy laptops. And I think that's also one of the things that I've found so particularly curious about Apple's current position and strategy right now is they completely decimated the netbook market. They completely decimated the low-end laptop market with the introduction of the iPad. The iPad brought forth a computing style, a consumer grade computing environment ecosystem that made a lot of sense for a lot of people. Not a big iPad fan. I'm actually not a big Android tablet fan, but for those people that need a basic computing set, a web browser and some limited apps that allow you to interact with services like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and a product like an iPad makes a lot of sense. Especially moving into areas where someone might want to just do a little video chat and then watch a movie and then maybe doodle something or take a picture, those very, very basic computing services. And so throughout all of this, we've been waiting for Apple to take that next step. I'm actually somewhat shocked that we still have yet to see Apple move into an area or move into a territory where we start incorporating touch into OS X. That once we start moving OS 10 into an all-touch environment, we can start to blend or blur the lines between consumer-grade touch toy consumption devices and into the professional grade solutions that Apple has sort of built their reputation on. It's the computer that artistic people use. If you're a writer or a graphic designer, you need a Mac. That kind of story that we sell, that kind of image that we push onto people as they're trying to get into these more creative careers. I work in voiceover recording now, and it's this common knowledge. It's this folksy common wit that you just sort of understand. If you're going to be doing creative things, you need to own a Mac. When actually most of the tech support calls I field are actually on Macs. I field far fewer on PCs, and I think it's mostly in part because once you own a PC, you sort of have to learn a little tech support on your own. It's like you just naturally come to like, oh, well, occasionally I need to run a virus scanner, or maybe I should defrag my hard drive. These things that you kind of lose some of the training wheels on, I think better prepare you for life in general. But I digress. MacBook, I'm really hoping to see at some point that Apple transitions into a product like the Surface, right? That's my ultimate wish for the Apple community, that you get a touchscreen Surface, and like maybe it's on an iMac. I've reviewed some phenomenal Lenovo's using Windows 8 that you can touch the screen or the keyboard, go keyboard and mouse. You can work in any way that suits you, as opposed to this is the way you use the computer. This is a mouse and keyboard computer, or this is a touchscreen tablet, and that's how you use the computer. But this also, I think, shows in stark reality that Apple is not interested in driving this industry forward. They're kind of fine writing this until something else happens and they need to respond to it. This is Apple's commentary. Apple's commentary on the MacBook was the MacBook line of laptops showed growth while the entire laptop industry was in decline. I can't think of a better moment or quote from Tim Cook which better misses the point on where we're all headed in terms of technology. The laptop market is dying because the laptop market needs to die. The laptop market is largely occupied by Windows machines. I mean, especially when we're talking about laptops and desktops, Apple only represents about 10% of that market. The PC market, the Windows market, is radically changing into one of modular and hybrid computing solutions. Microsoft did not have a competitor to the iPad. Microsoft did not have a competitor to Android tablets. So they had to take the product that they were successful with, Windows, and wreck it. I mean, that's what they ended up doing. Their intention was not to wreck Windows, but they had to break something to encourage growth in another area where they were not competitive. And that's why we're seeing some amazing work being done with hybrid and tablet solutions that allow you to utilize full desktop grade productivity software. We've got the Surface Pro 3. We've got some phenomenal solutions by Lenovo. I just reviewed a $360 Atom-powered netbooky style tablet, which if you want to do silly little app things, you can do silly little app things. If you want to load real Photoshop, real recording software, Audacity or Audition, you can do that too. And it's a little 10-inch tablet, which costs, I think, $100 less than an iPad mini, but also comes with its own Bluetooth magnetic keyboard. So, I mean, we're seeing amazing iteration and amazing evolution happening in this space. So, of course, that's going to destroy the traditional, I have a clamshell, non-touch screen keyboard and trackpad laptop. That is what is supposed to happen. And Apple no longer is at the forefront of that type or that style of innovation. So as the laptop market is dying, the MacBook market is kind of treading water. I mean, not treading water. It is demonstrating growth, but 2% growth isn't really exciting growth. I mean, that's if it were any other Apple product, would be like, well, that's not great. You know, we want to see something more exciting than that. We want to see them, totally, dominating this type of industry. But again, I think that's a fun marketing spin that you put on something like a laptop to say, oh, well, our laptop is doing better than the rest of the laptop industry, which is dying. As opposed to saying, hey, we've taken the success that we've had with the iPad and we've started working on OS 10 so that it can work in an iPad-like environment. And then you can dock it to a keyboard if you want. You can move it to another, cradle if you want it to power a larger display, you can do that. Instead, what we're getting is a MacBook with one connector, and that's exciting. So I've always appreciated from Apple their ability to cut the fat. You know, when serial connectors were starting to phase out and we were all moving to USB style solutions, Apple just axed it. I mean, they just hacked away at it. And like, no, we're going with USB. We've decided this is the future. Deal with it. And so a lot of people were kind of left in the lurch with things like, serial connector devices, especially like printers. That's cool. That's something that's exciting about kind of pushing this industry forward. I don't see that being the same style of innovation when we're talking about getting rid of things like Thunderbolt. Apple positioned Thunderbolt as this terrifically modular, powerful, fast data transfer protocol. They boosted it up. They moved it into this to the sphere, to this ecosystem, and it could do anything. I mean, I have people that are still using old FireWire recording gear on Thunderbolt, and that's one of the reasons why they chose a Mac. And it's something that we don't have in the PC space. I have a beautiful little mini FireWire mixer. You connect a FireWire cable into an audio mixer and you connect it into your computer, and you can have 12 tracks of recording all happening through this one interface. And I can't use it anymore. I can't use it anymore on any of my laptops. It was this great portable little recording solution for doing multi-track recording, and there is no PC solution for it at the moment. I'm actually seriously considering maybe picking up a Mac just so that I can have a Thunderbolt port so that I can actually use this thing again. So when we're faced with that, I don't completely understand USB-C being this is the only way you can use it. And I got into a really interesting conversation with a friend who was kind of upset. He's a huge Mac fan. He was kind of upset about USB-C, but was talking about it as if this was a foregone conclusion purchase for him, that he had to get the new MacBook. But it was going to be a real bummer. It was going to really kind of mess him up for the types of peripherals that he used powering it. He likes to take his MacBook and cradle it so that he's got a larger external monitor when he uses it at home. And he wasn't really quite sure what to do with those solutions. But this was the new thing. This was the new item. This was the new product. This is what he was going to have to do. There's just nothing else he could do. He had to do it. And that's when it finally sort of dawned on me that for as much as we've criticized Apple and for as much as we've complained about Apple, this is lifestyle. This is like why you pay more for an expensive purse or a nice bag, or, you can go to Target and buy a pair of dress shoes, or you can go to an actual shoe store and get a really nice pair of shoes. And this was just sort of a brand identity consciousness thing for him, that this is the image he put forward. This is the product that was going to continue that image. And that meant that's what he needed to get. And at that point, the way Apple lays out their website, the way Apple talks about their devices, the way they hide tech specs off on the side, because it doesn't really matter if we're talking about performance anymore. When Lenovo started using the Core M in the Yoga, the sky was falling, and the performance was terrible. And it was just so horrible. So comparatively, we should see some gnashing of teeth with the MacBook using the Core M, but I don't think we're going to see much hypercritical, or especially not in this doom and gloom way that we like to talk about PC devices and Android devices when performance doesn't meet our sort of imagined expectations on how all this stuff is going to work. But that's enough vetching about the MacBook, because we also got information on the Apple Watch line of devices. And I'm going to pull up the site on that if the Apple website will cooperate. And so now we have Apple's solution for notifications on your wrist. We have the Apple Watch. There are going to be three major divisions of the Apple Watch. And again, we're going to slide down. We've got really good feel-goody statements. This statement feels good. It feels hip. It feels cool. Our most personal device yet. It's not only a device that you keep with you, it's a device you wear. And it's an incredibly precise timepiece. Okay. I mean, one, I don't know that the Swiss have ever had any problems manufacturing precision timepieces. But in conjunction with your iPhone, it keeps time within 15 milliseconds of the definition global time. All right. So watches are sort of now just fashion accents. They're not really, used for what they're supposed to be, but that's cool. And entirely new ways to stay in touch. And you can send people heartbeats. That's a thing. and a smarter look at fitness. So I'm kind of glad to see that we're seeing some sort of some attention being paid to things like lifestyle and activity, that Apple doesn't have a fitness tracker in the game. That's sort of been ceded to companies like Fitbit. So that's super cool. And yeah, that's neat. Uh, okay. So I'm sorry. My mind's going in a million different places at once. I would highly recommend watching this video, the Apple Watch Plus Christy Turlington Burns, as she's training for a marathon in Africa. And she's going to be writing a blog, but watch the video on the Apple website, because I think it's also one of the most tone deaf things I've seen, where she's training in Africa. Okay, kudos. And she's using her new Apple Watch to train in Africa. But then she goes to a hospital to start talking about maternal health, and she's talking about, the health aspects of technology and how we can better improve health for, third world countries and developing nations, while, there are sick women and children at her feet. And so here's, supermodel with a $400 watch talking about helping poor people. And it's just, I feel bad for Christy Turlington, because it's pretty tone deaf. Yeah. And that was one of my air quotes favorite things about the Apple keynote. And now there's an Apple Watch for everybody. So we're going to start talking about design style and elements and layouts. And of course, they're showing off some of the most expensive pieces of gear that they have in the Apple Watch lineup. And then we finally get to the bottom and find your style in 3 distinctive collections. So again, in the main page, almost no discussion on capabilities, on battery life, survivability, or how waterproof are these things. And we finally get these little descriptions down here at the bottom. And one of the things that really bothers me about the way they've positioned these 3 devices, the Apple Watch Sport is the least expensive. Okay, that's fine. But it's the least expensive with the softest metal and an ion strengthened glass. So the Sport Edition is the version that's the weakest. The Sport Edition is the one where the screen will be the easiest to scratch and the body will be the easiest to chip and dent. And that I actually do kind of have a problem with. You've called it Sport, meaning I should go take it with me when I do the sports, but you have to step up to the Apple Watch to get stainless steel and a sapphire crystal display, which will be far more scratch resistant and far more durable. That really kind of bothers me, guys, especially as I've been a big fan of my Asus Zen watch, and I think this is a really attractive Android Wear device. But the curvature of this display, the display is actually, the glass on this display is curved, makes it really easy for this to scrape up against things, especially as all smartwatches seem to depend on the watch being worn up. They don't. Very few of them wear well on the inside of your wrist, which is how I protect them from randomly scraping them against things. And this is an ion treated glass as well. And I already have a couple scratches on the front face. So given that the Apple Watch is going to be even just a little bit thicker and curvier on that front glass face, is even less lifestyle proof than what we're sort of faced with when you call something a sport design. But I digress again. So then we step up into pricing, and when we look at the Apple Watch Sport, it actually makes a lot of sense. We're looking at $349 for the 38 millimeter, the smaller Apple Watch, and $399 for the 42 millimeter, the larger sport watch. And they're all, then it's just based on color preferences. So we've got white, blue, green, red, black, and they're all the same price. $50 price difference between the smaller and larger screens. And whether or not we want to start talking about worth, like one of those things I hate about tech people, like, is it worth it? Is this more worth or less worth? Is it the worthiness? Because it's worth, then I'll worth it. Because we all flailed our arms around when we saw that the LG G Watch R was going to be $299, and that was way too much for a circular watch display and stainless steel body and a proper heart rate monitor. But Apple Watch $349, $399, we don't seem to think that feels as bad, because then we walk into the Apple Watch. Now, I have purposely positioned this website at the extreme end of the Apple Watch, because the Apple Watch with a black stainless steel link bracelet is going to be $1,100. $1,099. That's a lot. I mean, what are we going to talk about for worth? When we're talking about a device which is largely the same as the Apple Watch Sport, where you should pay more for the Apple Watch because it is stainless steel versus aluminum, and it is a sapphire crystal display instead of ion glass, and that makes sense. But these are not standard watch bands, so you can't take an Apple Watch yet. I hope what someone will do is make a little plug, which then terminates in a 22 millimeter connector at the top of the watch. I think that would be awesome because then you could just pop in whatever quick release pins that you want and then wear whatever watch band you want. But basically, Apple is going to make a play saying, we know in the world of fashion and the world of technology that you spent $1,100 on this watch, but we also know that you cheaped out and you only spent $350 on this watch. And it's all basically, it largely comes down to what band you were able to get with the watch. So I'll be curious to see, will they sell this band separately? And will this band cost $400? I mean, like, I'm really kind of shocked that that's one of the major, and especially in this line, because if I can backtrack here just a little bit, when we get into a brown sort of leather loop, and this is a really ugly watch. I'm sorry, that's tacky. That's $700 watch with the band. Oh, and now the Apple site's completely wigged out on me. That's awesome. But coming down into just the Apple Watch with the Sport Band takes us up to $600. So Apple has priced a metal watch band at around $400-$500. That's nuts. That's just crazy. I mean, I'm not even going to get into Apple Watch Edition because that is sort of a forced exclusivity. We're going to make it out of 18 karat gold, and then we're going to charge something ridiculous. So it kind of feels like you're getting a deal if you want to step down to the Apple Watch with the metal watch band, and it's only $1,000. Because I mean, like, the top of the line watch starts at $10,000 and ends at $17,000. $17,000 with tax rebates and credits in the state of California. That's only $1,000 less than picking up a Nissan Leaf. So a car. For your top of the line Apple Watch Edition Plus. Apple has completely crested this notion of what these things do versus what image they send. And I think one of the things that's most disappointing about being a geek and watching this happen is I was really holding out some hope. Every time we bring up a smartwatch, because I've got Android Wear devices, I've got my LG G Watch R, and I've got an Asus Zen watch. I've got a couple gears. I'm reviewing the Gear S. I'm wrapping this up. Should be done this week. And then I also have a Gear 2. And then into some of the funky things, like I loves me the Pebble. I like the Qualcomm Talk. This is the watch I wear the most often, the Qualcomm Talk, because of the amazing display and the battery life. It's not the most attractive timepiece, but it's kind of fun. And then even some of these dumb watches that bring smart features like the Martian Passport. I mean, we've got so many different options for organically interacting with notifications on your wrist. But every time I show off a smartwatch, I get the same sort of reply from someone in my crowd of friends. But I mean, like, I can just do all those things on my phone. I mean, like, why would I do that? That why question is infuriating. I can sit down and I can talk about nuance, and I can talk about organic interaction with notifications, and I can talk about discretion, and that, my watch is far more discreet than pulling out my Galaxy Note 4 every single time I get a notification, especially when I'm sitting at dinner, where more people are interrupting the conversation with their phones than my phones are ever interrupting the conversations now that I wear a smartwatch. We can talk about a lot of that stuff, but there's still this notion that that the smartwatch industry is missing something. That something needs to happen, that something cool is lacking from the experience. And so we keep trying to cram more crap into smartwatches. We'll put cameras in there. We'll put IR blasters in there. We'll put LTE radios in there. This is no longer a companion device to your phone, but it's its own phone. And yeah, I don't necessarily agree with the notion that I need to strap a phone to my wrist to make it worth it to pick up some kind of smartwatch solution. I'm perfectly happy with the idea that smartwatches live and die by how well they can serve me small, at a glance pieces of information. take Android Wear and turn-by-turn directions. When my turn's coming up, I get a small vibration pulse on my wrist. While I'm driving, I can look down really quickly to see if I've got a right turn or a left turn because of these really big arrows. And that's easier, or that's a little bit more organic and a little bit more ergonomic than having a phone in a cup holder and trying to do turn-by-turn directions that way. We should all be using some sort of windshield mount if it's legal in your state to interact with your phone in that way. But obviously we don't, because at every stoplight you can see everyone's heads go down as they try and look at, and their faces are being illuminated by their glowing rectangles. So already smartwatch, much safer than the way most people are using their phones when out and about while operating a motor vehicle. But we still have this idea. Well, there's something not tying this whole thing together. There's something lacking from the experience. And so you hope that a company like Apple, that is so focused on design and streamlining the consumer experience, they can take really raw technologies, focus on one aspect of that technology, and deliver an experience that is accessible to a huge chunk of the audience out there. That they would take a look at what's going on with smartwatches and come up with something fresh, come up with something new. And that is exactly what we didn't see at this last keynote. We got kind of the same boilerplate that we got when the Apple Watch was first announced. And then we kind of just got a few more tech demos that it'll have apps. And look at this UI with all of these tiny little circles. And that was it. There wasn't any Apple cohesive brand strategy. It wasn't that this fits into the Mac ecosystem in such a way as it ties other devices together or simplifies other services or brings notions of ergonomics and user interfaces together. It kind of is just a different take on what Samsung's doing with the Gear, and in a way that I think is very un-Apple-like. We talk about the USB-C port on the MacBook. That's very un-Apple-like. So the computer itself is sleek and streamlined, but you have to have dongles, like Medusa cabling coming out of this one port if you want to do more than one thing with that port at the same time. If you want to charge your MacBook and connect the USB flash drive at the same time, you've got to have like a multi-headed array of cabling coming out of it. That's really ugly. That's an ugly solution to the problem of creating a beautiful computer. And kind of the same thing happening here with the Apple Watch. This UI and these different ways that you interact with information on the screen and the crown and this port cover, that's kind of ugly. It's one of the problems that I have with Android Wear. It's really hard in Android Wear to just get to a list of apps. You've got to scroll through two completely different menus. Google is so focused on trying to work voice commands into this that they sort of buried the lead on the different types of services we might want to control from our wrist, even down to things like the music player. The music player on Android Wear is sort of a 2.5 swipe solution if you want to skip a track. You've got to activate the watch face, sort of slide through the music player, just the play pause command, and then you can get to volume controls and track controls. But if I'm listening to music, it's far more likely that I'm going to want to skip tracks or control the volume alongside being able to play and pause. So the fact that I have to slide through a different menu already makes that a little less attractive. And especially where the music player on a Qualcomm Talk is like one thumb press at the bottom. And if I already had the music player up, it just stays up. So I can just keep using the music player from very simple tap commands off the base of the watch. So other companies have sort of figured out some of those ergonomic tricks. The Apple Watch hasn't brought anything new to the table. It's just different. And they're kind of getting away with commanding headlines on the fact that it's going to be really expensive, that it's going to be really desirable, that it's so fashionable. And in the Android Wear ecosystem, we've kind of moved away from, if it's a rectangular screen, it's probably cheaper. If it's a circular screen, it's probably going to be more expensive. And that's actually a new technology, which brings a more watch-like experience to a lot of people that will hopefully convince other manufacturers to get in this space. Because now that Apple has their watch out in the ecosystem, I'm really hoping to see Citizen maybe come up with some style of solution, maybe a combination of, actual analog watch guts, Swiss guts, hardware for actually telling the time, and then maybe some sort of screen overlay that can feed me notifications. I mean, I think that would be beautiful. A company like Movado, I think, could destroy this market. And while we usually make fun of them for the super high-priced mid-range specs that they deliver, a company like Vertu could destroy the Apple Watch and maybe actually delivering full 24 karat gold and some type of sapphire crystal display. They were the first company to actually launch a phone with a sapphire crystal display, if I'm not mistaken. So already, there's so much potential for competition in this space. The thing I am actually really happy to see with Apple Watch is that it is bringing up this discussion with wearable technology. And I have to believe that when the Apple Watch actually goes on sale, it will double the smartwatch market, if not triple it, because it's tied in with Apple services and people that have made their lifestyle brand focused on Apple, that this will be a desirable product for them. I'm hoping to see the Apple Watch actually sell well at the lower end, like the $600 watch. Even though we're talking like you can buy phones for less than what the Apple Watch is going to cost, and actually really reasonably good ones that also incorporate sapphire crystal displays. It just drives me crazy. So that to me will legitimize this industry. It'll say smartwatches are a thing, because here's what I think needs to happen with the smartwatch. I think the smartwatch needs to peak really quickly and then die in the same way that Bluetooth headsets did. Because because the smartwatch should be our very first conversation with more organic interactions with services. We've moved some of the interaction of your data, of your services, from your phone to your wrist. When your phone vibrates in your pocket, it's your thigh is a little less sensitive than a tiny vibration pulse to your wrist, and it's a little closer than reaching into your pocket and pulling out a larger display. It's just a little bit more immediate in interaction for a small piece of information. And once we get consumers comfortable with that, maybe then we can revisit other ways that we can interact with data. Maybe then we can start interacting with augmented reality. Once we get people comfortable with something little like this, I think they'll eventually become passé. Remember when everyone had to have like some hot, sexy, glowing blue LED thing plugged in their ear, and Bluetooth headsets were like the newest thing and so exciting, and how quickly that became kind of a douchebag play. You were always wearing your Bluetooth headset. And now look around you. I mean, people don't wear Bluetooth headsets like they used to. It's sort of a mixed variety of solutions. Some people went back to traditional cabled headphones. Some people went to wireless headphones. Some people stuck with Bluetooth. And then some people just said, hey, you know what? My car has Bluetooth. That's really the main time where I need to go hands-free. So when I'm walking around, I'll just take the call and talk on the phone. And then when I'm in my car, the car will just use its speakers as a speakerphone solution. So that expanded. The Bluetooth earpiece opened up all kinds of potential for other types of solutions for interacting with our phone audio. I think smartwatches need to do the same thing. And eventually we'll get back to maybe we have eye-wearable, eye-level computing environments built into glasses. We can look at Microsoft HoloLens, where we can start working into augmented reality, where instead of just like a little screen that puts up text, as you're doing your turn by turn, it's drawing CG maps on the screen in front of you that react in real time to driving conditions and help you navigate traffic and accidents and stuff like that. So Apple joining the watch crowd means that we now have an expanded conversation. And I think products like Pebble and Android Wear are going to get a lot more attention, just because now people will see, oh, well, if Apple's doing it, it must be a real thing. And now we can have competition for those real things, and people can sort of diversify their portfolio of tech products. I think we're going to see more focus being paid on fitness trackers. I think Fitbit's actually going to get a bump from the fact that Apple Watch is out in the ecosystem. I think the Microsoft Band is going to get a bump just because Apple Watch is out in the ecosystem. But it really does continue to drive home the point for me that Apple is now a company built on lifestyle. They're a company built on image, and it kind of doesn't even make sense to start debating the tech merits. They're not a tech company anymore. That just because something has an LCD display and a processor in it doesn't mean that it's focused on technology. It's kind of like we talk about comic book movies as if they're still just for nerds. There's nothing more mainstream right now than a comic book film. I mean, think about it. Those are the big tentpole films that we've got, the big action spectaculars that are coming out. That's the most accessible form of media and entertainment that you can find. Comics aren't niche anymore. They're as mainstream as you can get. So for those of us that came up in tech when, you were always called a geek, you were always called a nerd, you were made fun of, you do that math stuff, you program, you get wedgies, stuff like that. I joined the track team so I could run away from bullies. That's sort of been taken from us. technology has been taken from us because everybody needs technology. They all claim that they're not into geeky things, but they define their lives by what products they use. And so that means they also have to define their lives by what technology products they use. But for a lot of those people that are into lifestyle, brand, and imaging, they don't care about screen resolution. They have a brand name for it. It's a Retina display. Good enough. They don't care about processor speed. They don't care about RAM. They don't care about storage. They don't care if you're using DDR3 or DDR4. They don't care if you're using, multi-level or 3D arrays for solid state drives. They don't care if, with the pixel density or what actually generates light behind the display, if it's a backlight or if it's an organic light emitting diode. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. They want to see the practical application of it, that it works enough for them to actually wear it as some sort of fashion piece or something that continues to refine and define what it is that who they are as a person. They're an Apple person, and so they like Apple things. They like Apple fashion. They like Apple brands, and they can get their work done on them. And they care about that. They do care about what, the productivity of such a device, in as much as this is the brand and this is the lifestyle and this is the image that they've created for themselves. And so it's kind of like not even worth getting frustrated anymore, getting worked up or getting upset anymore, because it's not a tech thing anymore. It's not a gadget thing anymore. It's not worth debating the specs and the performance and the speed and the fluidity of the UI and what apps there are, because it's completely removed from that now. So that's sort of the big realization that I've had in dealing with this last Apple announcement. Because back during the Steve Jobs days of Apple as a company, Steve Jobs was a beautiful nemesis. I had crested my Apple fixation, and especially once the iPhone came out, and I was still using a Windows mobile phone when the iPhone came out. And the iPhone came out and it couldn't do apps and it couldn't do anything, and it had a 2G data connection. And that's when I noticed, that's when I really saw Apple turn, from being a company that led the way, led the charge, pushed into new boundaries, pushed into new territories. And instead, they simplified a device. So that's good. And it made it more accessible to consumers. And that's good. But if I had switched from a Windows mobile phone to an iPhone, it would have meant I couldn't do any of the things that I used to do on my Windows mobile phone, even down to editing documents. And I would have had to go from a 3G data connection back to a 2G data connection. And that's really when I started noticing this change. But I think over the last 2 generations of Apple products, we've flipped the switch completely, where this isn't a company that's interested in moving tech frontiers forward as much as it is in capitalizing on the tech research that other companies have done, taking those raw technologies and then slapping some kind of brand name on them. But of course, I really do want to hear from you guys on what you thought about the Apple announcement, what you thought about these products coming to market, where you think you might go if you're shopping a new MacBook and this is a solution for you, or if this is maybe giving you a little pause that you might not be able to get your work done on just one USB connector, or if you think this is also going to rejoin the conversation for wearable technology, what you think the Apple Watch is going to do. Drop me some comments down below. I'm really curious to see what other people's thoughts are, because I kind of had my coming to Jesus moment here with just realizing why I was upset with the way that some of these presentations have been handled and why I've been frustrated with Apple as a company, and then realizing it kind of doesn't matter. It kind of doesn't matter if I can point out to people, oh, well, this product actually does more. Doesn't matter. This product is actually going to do the same thing, but it's going to be less expensive. It doesn't matter. That's not why they bought it. So hopefully that causes me and you a little less stress moving forward as we talk about technology stuff, as we talk about gadgets, as we talk about consumer electronics. So definitely drop me some comments down below. This has been a longer and more rambling video than I thought it was going to be. And I actually had more pictures queued up to do more demonstrations and stuff. But yeah, I don't think you guys need it. I think you guys get the point. And especially with all of the videos out there, it's like, oh, the Apple Watch explained. Like, who needed the Apple Watch explained? I mean, like, who was out there going, oh, Apple Watch, what could it be? Well, I just don't understand. So I'm trying not to do that clickbaity, hijinky thing where, I write a BuzzFeed style title for my videos just so that I can trick you into watching something that you probably, if you know how to use a web browser, you probably know about as much about this stuff as I do already. So I don't think anyone's really surprised by what the Apple Watch is. I think there is a little disappointment in that it doesn't move the smartwatch industry forward as much as we'd hoped it would, outside of it just making smartwatches a bit more fashionable and a bit more desirable. So, folks, that's my spiel, and I'm sticking to it. As always, thanks so much for watching my videos, sharing my videos. I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you all weren't out there linking and sharing my videos on social media. So I can't thank you enough for bringing more cool people to the party. If you've enjoyed this rambling nonsense, you can also catch some of my legit reviews, which are a lot tighter edited than just doing a live rambling hangout on air. And as always, definitely hit subscribe if you want to catch more of these videos and reviews that I produce. And hit this thumbs up button because that helps me be more visible in search. And I will catch you all on the next video.